Okay, we'd like to open up the Budget Committee work session on the school's proposed budget on December 9th at 9:05. We have the roll call, please.
Betsy Coburn. Barbie Hartford.
Tom Chase.
Dan McNally.
Bernie Dunn.
Betty Smith.
Joe McCaffrey. Mike Moore.
Brian Winslow.
Linda Smith. Dolores Fritz.
Bob Young. Scott Breyer.
And Ginger Dole. Excused members are John Boudreau, Brad Hall, Hal Kreider. We've not heard anything from Dave. I'm assuming he's on his way. But we'll go ahead and begin. So you have your agenda, brief that it is. The minutes from last week's meeting, as you know, they were pretty extensive, will be mailed, along with the minutes from today's meeting. So once you receive them, please review them as quickly or as soon as you can after receiving them while your memories are still fresh, because we will be reviewing those at our meetings in January, because we'll have to review those then. So today we are doing the proposed 2018-19 operating budget and warrant articles for the school. And article number 2, I believe it is the operating budget. Do we have any motion?
I'd like to make a motion to move the bottom line.
Second.
$1,830,834.26.00.
Second.
We have a motion and second to move the bottom line. We needed to open up the budget so that we can start reviewing it. Last week, as you know, we went through section by section, we voted section by section, and we were here until 4 o'clock. So my thought is that by opening up the budget, we can still go through page by page, so if anyone has questions or what have you, we can still address them. But we don't have to vote on every single section. Make sense? Okay, so that being said, it's easier with the school's budget to do page by page simply because some of the sections take 5-6 pages. So does anyone have any questions on page 1? Okay, page 2. Betty.
I have a couple of questions on art supplies. Why did that go up so much? And foreign language, why did that go down so much?
So for art supplies, please remember that our art room serves 9 grade levels. So we last year had held her to $1,000, and that was a tough stretch for her. So this year we tried to honor the fact that she does work with every student in the building. And I think that comes out to something like $3 a kid, maybe 4. And then for foreign language supplies, there is a note there. We are looking, now that it's a core class, we are looking to purchase textbooks for that. So I've included textbooks in a different line. So the overall cost for world language has gone up, just not in this line.
Yes, Mike.
Point of order. I'm not really familiar with the school board, so maybe they could...
And I thought of that just a couple of seconds ago before you mentioned that. Would the members sitting up at the table please introduce themselves for the record?
Jocelyn Young, principal of Northwood School.
I'm Keith Wigan. I'm the chair of the school board.
Bob Godomsky, superintendent of schools.
Marjorie Whitmore, business administrator for SAU 44.
Scott Runing, assistant superintendent of schools and student services director.
Thank you very much for reminding me. Okay, other questions on page 2? Yes.
Let me just go back to page 1 because I neglected to ask. The first line, just health insurance do not exceed rates, came in at 2.4 decrease. Was that decrease, were those a decrease in rates that the insurance company elected, or was there did the decrease occur personnel? Or what was the factors that caused the decrease?
The decrease for the health insurance rate was 2.4%. However, we had changes this year, so that also reflects the staff changes that we've had, as well as the plans for the current staff that we already have.
So the rate, it was a rate decrease. The insurance companies changed their rates that they previously
They always
stipulated the year before.
Yeah, year by year, we get a either increase or decrease.
Okay.
Joe, that's typed in right underneath it.
Not where I'm looking, it isn't.
You're not on the right page. We're on these pages.
Oh, yeah, so we're on the budget itself.
Okay. I was just picking
No,
out.
we're going through
we're
page
doing
by
the
page of
budget.
the budget.
All right, I was just picking out the first
Yep.
line, page 1.
Tom?
Pursuant to Mr. Moore's question about the school board and SAU representatives, also note that Mr. Janver is also on the school board, is sitting to your left.
She's punishing me. She told me I can't speak, nor is she going to introduce me because I'm sitting over here where I can talk with my leg. So,
can pop it up
and that's
there.
fine. I understand Ginger now, and I understand her petty little things, so that's fine.
So I'm going to
Make
make
friends.
I'm going to make a very quick correction for the people who may be watching this. Traditionally, all members of the selectmen and their staff, when we review the town's budget, sit up behind. Traditionally, all members of the school board and their staff sit up behind. I did go over to Tim first thing and asked him if he was going to be sitting up with the school board, because this is a work session, not a public hearing, in the respect that the public may speak. And if he wanted to speak to anything, as we go over things, he would need to be up there. I also told him it was his choice. He said thank you. At no time did he mention that he needed sufficient room to prop his leg up. That being said, let's move on. Any other questions on page 2?
This came up back.
Yes,
Not a
Michael.
question, but I'm assuming under copier services, teacher's room increased by 1,000 to account for new lease, not leased. That is more money.
We have 2 people can pick out. Thank you.
And I missed that.
I didn't. I got it highlighted, but I didn't think it was.
Get that one?
That's 4. See? It's highlighted.
Okay. Any other questions or comments on page 2? Okay, moving forward to page 3.
I have
Brian.
2 for math supplies and for social studies supplies. It looks like the actuals from this year are quite a bit higher than the proposed. I just want to make sure we're budgeting enough that we have the materials that we need.
So this year we purchased, we're in our last year of purchasing the Go Math program. So that is now purchased K through 8. So that's why you're seeing a reduction in the amount for math supplies. And social studies supplies, again, people purchased things last year that they needed and now are feeling like they have adequate materials for next year.
Okay, thanks.
Betty?
Remedial reading and classroom workbooks. One went up by quite a bit and one went down by quite a bit.
Remedial reading, we do have a reading specialist and 2 reading tutors who provide services again to all grade levels, 9 grade levels. So that's, as our reading specialist comes into her 2nd year, she's getting a better sense of what we have and what we need. So that reflects her judgment on that. And then the classroom workbooks, I redistributed some of the requests to the language arts supplies line because that seemed like a more appropriate placement for me.
Other questions on page 3? Okay, page 4. Seeing none, page 5. Michael?
Well, there's a huge drop in the second one down, special ed non-public tuition elementa, whatever.
That is,
Mr. Rooney.
So your out-of-district placements dropped in the elementary school and are now shifting into the high school line, so you'll see a corresponding increase later in the budget, which is a promising trend for you, in that your elementary school is doing a better job of meeting the needs of its special education students, and you're seeing that drop, and those kids enter high school. So there's only one student in the elementary school and an out-of-district placement slated for next year.
Okay, thank you.
any other questions? No, I've lost. Are we on 5 or 6? Tom?
I would request my fellow budget committee members, if you would, to reference a line when you start to talk about a particular item.
We were on 6, okay. I think we were still on 5, that's why.
Sorry, I think I
No, maybe even the
turned
page.
through 2 pages instead of one.
So here it is, on page 6.
We're going to 6.
Let's do on.
Okay, so now we're on 6. We've answered the question about the non-public.
That's on 6.
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
Right.
So we're all on the same
So
page.
we're all on page 6 now. Are there other questions on page 6? Joe?
So if I understand, Mr. Rooney, the special ed, non-public tuition, elementary, it's dropped by 212,000 and change. That's dropping because of students leaving the district or leaving or moving on to, excuse me, I'm asking over here. Or is that students moving on to high school and it's dropping the elementary line? Is that moving on to high school?
Your high school lines will be up.
I'm sorry?
Your high school non-public tuition line will be increased. You'll
Will
see that
be-
later in the budget.
Say it one more time because I didn't hear you.
The students are leaving elementary school and entering high school.
mic working?
Is it on?
Yep. The students are leaving elementary school and moving on to high school. So you're going to see a drop in your elementary tuition lines, and then you're going to see an increase in your high school tuition lines.
Okay. Is any portion of that students that have left altogether are Northwood? Any, let's say, significant, other than a very minor difference?
So those are the students who have got high school.
All of those to high school? Okay. So that creates with some other decreases from the previous page, that's totaling up $325,575 decrease in special ed elementary. And that's what we're seeing here, right? Okay.
Other questions on page 6?
Can I clarify too? Just that,
Excuse me, Joe, you have to.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
I didn't think of this portion, but that's the elementary costs, transportation or other elements of that would add to that decrease. I mean, the decrease that's 212,000, those students don't require transportation, let's say, out of the elementary, but they may well require it up at the high school level. So there'll be a shift there also, is that right? In terms of costs?
There's 3 major sections of the special education budget. You have your elementary section, you have your high school section, and then you have your special education transportation section. You'll see when we get to those 2 other sections, there's going to be a drop. I haven't looked at this page and I haven't reviewed, but there will be a drop in elementary transportation, there'll be an increase in high school transportation, there'll be a drop in elementary tuition, there'll be an increase in high school tuition.
I just wanted to bring it out, that's all. Thanks.
Anything else on page 6? Okay, moving on to page 7. Seeing none, page 8. Page 9.
Just on page 8.
Oh, sorry,
Just a
Bob.
quick question. The truant officer, is that a, do we pay a town police officer or is there a person?
I didn't hear the question, I'm sorry.
Just
Have a-
curiosity as to the truant officer.
Okay.
We have a truant officer that we pay by the hour. It's not a town employee. The person that is in the position is an hourly employee as much as we use them. So if we send them out on a detail or a visit to a home, at that point, they would clock in the hours and we would pay that.
Anything else on 8? Page 9. Page 10. Page 11. Oh, I'm sorry. Betty?
Under new equipment and replacement equipment, I'm assuming that just switched.
What page are you on and what line?
Page 10. And it's the third and fourth lines from the top. The new equipment, 5733.
Under the nurse.
Replacement, 5737.
Yeah,
Yeah, the replacement tells you why.
it's not new, it's stuff that she already
It
has.
really just depends on whether, if it's replacing something that she already has, it goes under replace equipment. If it's something separate that's brand new, it would go under new equipment. So it's really year by year.
Other questions on page 10? Hang on. Page 11. Okay, moving on, page 12. Tom?
There was, if I understand correctly, the total curriculum director at the top of page 12 is monies in the budget for the curriculum director.
Correct. A full-time curriculum director.
And my question would be, since that was an area of contention, how's it going?
I would pass this to Ms. Young because I personally think it's going great, but I would pass this to
Ms.
Ms. Young.
Your professional opinion, is this, are we making a difference? Is it?
I think it's successful on two fronts. One, in creation of the curriculum document so that teachers have a map and progression to follow. And two, in terms of the professional development that she can provide to teachers in how to implement that curriculum most effectively. So she's working with teachers through professional learning community meetings, she's doing instructional coaching with teachers, she's helping teachers identify additional materials and supplies that will help them best help students learn the material. Plus she's doing a lot of the building of the sort of curricular infrastructure. So yes, I would say it's quite successful at this point.
Thank you.
She comes to the first board meeting of each month and gives an update of what's going on in the school and what she's doing in the classrooms with the teachers and everything like that. So, I mean, it's not something that we're going to see overnight, but there's great progress being made, is my feeling.
I would also say there's additional benefits with this position because typically a lot of these responsibilities have been falling on the shoulders of your school administration, your principal and your assistant principal. And by having a curriculum director, not only is it a non-evaluative position, so there's a lot of co-teaching and mentoring and things like that going on, but it also frees up your administrative staff to do evaluations and walkthroughs and be more visible in the building. And the expectations on our administrators are constantly going up. So I think that that's an additional benefit for this position.
Any other questions on page 12? Okay, seeing none. 13? Okay. Page 14. Page 15. Oh, sorry. Tom, you gotta say yes.
This is
to
not a
something.
numerical question, but I think it's a critical question, and that is, my experience at the school is that the technology support person is really important to see that the technology works. I speak from a person whose computer ceased to work this morning. And you just, so I shook it. And Steve obviously knows
Big camera.
to do more than that. And I'm just want to know that that domain of activity is robust and successful.
I'm not sure what you're asking.
Is that domain of activity robust and successful?
Yes, Mr. Robert works throughout the building. He's teaching classes to help kids understand technology. He's very responsive to teachers who are experiencing tech malfunctions. Some teachers noted just recently that we're very grateful that he's as available as he is and as responsive as he is. And I would say that our technology program is progressing nicely.
You work on Macs? Thank you.
Yeah, just keep shaking.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else on 14? Moving on, 15? Michael?
Well, just under new equipment technology, 5733, that seems to be all over the place for the years, but I mean, there was none in the current budget, well, one placeholder. So exactly it's replacing some
There's a
tablets,
note right below on what they're planning to purchase.
3 tablets, 20 Chromebooks.
It's a Chromebook for those of us
It's
who
the
haven't been
little
in school for a
yeah,
while.
it's the you could probably explain it better than I can. It's like a little computer, but.
Chromebooks are a Google machine that uses the operating system Chrome. We identified them as being necessary for third grade because third graders are sort of in that transition year between iPads and regular laptops. So the Chromebooks provide a nice transition device for them to be able to use effectively.
And do you have Chromebooks already, or is this the start doing that?
We have some Chromebooks, but not a lot. So this will be dedicated for third grade.
Follow-up, just curious about this. So on the Chromebooks, I'm just wondering, is this something you're implementing or each third grade is going to get a Chromebook?
So we'll have, we already have some existing Chromebooks available for third grade, so this will bring it up so that each student, yes, does have a computer available to them. Will they have their own specific device that is only theirs? No, but they'll each have a bank of Chromebooks in their room that kids can use.
So, for example, they leave it at school, would that Chromebook fall to 4th, 5th, 6th grade, or?
No, so the Chromebooks would stay in third grade. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
So starting in 4th grade, each child gets their own device.
Oh, they actually get their own
Yeah,
computer.
they don't bring them home, but they have their own dedicated device. The nice thing about Chromebooks is there's no hard drive, so you have to log in, and then everything is saved on the cloud for you. So it doesn't matter which device you use. You don't save anything to the machine itself.
Thank you.
Other questions on, Joe?
Well, this is, part of the answer is just occurred, but...
Which page are we looking at,
Well, we're
Joe?
15, but going into 16 because it's dealing with the computer supplies and additional computers. On 16, aside from the Chromebooks just mentioned, 20 new Chromebooks, and I think that was explained what the rationale there is, but 50 computers replacement, computer replacement cart, 24 computers, and there's some smart board, and so I'll separate that because that's not, that's more for the general classroom use. But last year, we allocated money to add additional computers. There was even I think it was a special warrant. But in any case, we added additional computers, and at that time, I remember the count had gone over, that is the number of computers that we had gone over the number of students that we had by, I don't know, again, this is unfortunately just trying to recall, but something in the order of 30, 40, 50. And so I'm wondering, why is it we're buying more computers, and this is, what, a total of, what did I say, 50 plus, well, 50 plus 24.
No, 24 is to
Well, it's on the
put
cart.
24 on the cart.
So what is the question?
24 computers, yeah. So 74 computers additional. So I'm wondering, why are we not making use of the actual overage of computers we had previously? I grant, I mean, some break or whatever, but...
Okay, so that's your question, is why they're
Yeah,
needing
why, and so we're
more?
adding... We're
Okay,
adding,
so let's let them answer that first,
yeah,
Joe.
And it's $25,000.
Above answer that, Jocelyn, please?
So currently, we do have about 20 computers more than we have students. I will note that these computers are $200 computers. They're not super fancy, high-tech, durable ones, and they're used by children who drop them and misplace them and then forget that they're in there and sit on them or whatever. So they do have a pretty quick turnaround time overall. We keep the 20 extras for spares as they break. We also have a technology plan that calls for, approved by the school board, that calls for replacement of about 20% of the computers each year, so that every 5 years we're replacing 1/5, or every year we're replacing 1/5, so that we don't have computers lasting more than 5 years in the building, which is about their shelf life.
Okay, so but are you saying a substantial part of this might be accounted for, that is the replacement, in terms of breakage, damage, and so forth? There is a certain percentage, is it 10, 20% that's going down each year?
I don't know
Breakage
off the top of my head how many are broken, but so I'm answering your question in two parts. Your question was, why do we have more computers than kids? And it's so that we have spares for when they break. And your second question was, why are we replacing this many? And it's because this represents about 20% of, or 25% of what we have.
Okay.
Barbie? Can I just give a little, so 5 years for a computer, especially in the setting of an elementary school, or 5 years for a computer period, but especially in the setting of an elementary school, is a long time. Even though we bought some last year, those are still in use, but the ones that we bought 5 years ago, those are the ones that we're trying to replace. The technology plan, correct me if I'm wrong, was also approved by the state and is actually a sample. When Mr. Roberts wrote his technology plan, the state is using that as an example of what a good technology plan is supposed to look like. So he did a phenomenal job on it. And this is all in there so that we're keeping the computers up to date that we're using within our classrooms. Because you can't use a 10-year-old computer.
That's Tom. That's true.
Also, if you look at the lines, Joe, you look back 2 years, and you've got new equipment at $76,000. That was getting the equipment in place to actually get to the point where we want it to be. And now you see replacement of equipment. Your new equipment has gone down substantially, and your replacement of equipment has stayed fairly consistent. And like Jocelyn was talking about, that's the 5-year rotation for the technology plan.
All right, that answers it. By the way, is there any equipment that shows itself to be more durable than others?
That would be something that they would be...
Well, I know, but I mean, having a certain percentage of breakage and so forth, that naturally I understand why that occurs. So, are there any of these brands, units? I mean, you mentioned the Chromebooks. I know those are small, light units. So, but are any of them more durable? Are you seeing that where you might direct, the purchases towards more durable, or is that silly?
Part of Mr. Roberts' job as the technology director is to make an informed decision based on his professional judgment, finding that balance between durability and utility and also cost. So I think he has identified machines that find that balance as best as we can.
So one last thing I just wanted to add on this is that we're trying to get to a place with this 20% replacement of equipment each year so that we don't have spikes in the budget, right? So every year moving forward now, we're going to be replacing 20% of the equipment. We could not do that and have 0% replacement this year and maybe next year or something like that, and then we'll have a big spike 3 years from now where it's going to go up, again, $70,000 or whatever, $35,000. So the goal was to get to a place where our budgets are stabilized and we can just replace 20% every year and go on forever like that.
All right, thanks.
And correct me if I'm wrong, the plan is available, if anybody wants to see it. The technology plan is available. If you want to see the plan that Mr. Robert came up with, it's available so that you know what the next,
Okay.
I think it's I can't remember if it was a 3 or 5 year plan that he had come up with. It was a 3-year plan from last year, but if you want to look at that so that you know too what the budget's going to look like going forward for the school, it's available.
Michael?
Just since we're on the subject, you have computer replacement in the first line on page 16 of 50 for 10,600, but 24 in the next line for almost twice that. Are they different computers or?
So that's the replacement of a cart that has computers, so that reflects the replacement of the computers and the cart.
Okay.
It's a shelf that has the plugs in it so that they are charged
All right.
as part of that.
Well, you have computer card at the bottom, which I assume is the same thing for $800.
Right, so the computer cart at the bottom is just the cart.
Okay, so you're getting
Without
24
computers.
carts up in that, along with 24 computers.
One cart, so the computer replacement cart that lists 24 computers is one cart with 24 computers that will live in the library.
Okay, so what's the lower one then?
And then that's a cart that will live in grade 6.
That's the same cart? Same type cart? I'm just trying to understand why that's $800 and...
Maybe I
I
did.
think the first one includes the cart plus the 24 computers.
Right. Well, the 24 computers should cost about $5,000 according to the 50 computers above
I
that.
think too, though, I think it's different computers, what you're asking.
Okay,
It
that's
is-
my
Because some of it does have to, some of them are for students, but some of them are also for teachers. So I think, correct me if I'm wrong, and if you look in the plan, the teachers' computers also need to, some of them are still using desktops. So those things need to be replaced also. So I think, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. Some of them still want to use desktops. But, so you're looking at different types of computers, not just the Chromebooks or, the ones that the students use, but something a little bit better for the teachers to be using and stuff like that too.
Chair,
Scott?
Chairperson. Just, now that you brought this topic up, I'm just asking, wouldn't it be, why do you budget, shouldn't you budget, I look at teachers as staff and the students as education. Is there, shouldn't it be, because this is a little confusing.
This is technology though. It's technology for the whole school.
I know, but it might be nice if you broke it out between what's for the kids versus what's for the staff.
So that could be a suggestion for the school board for consideration when they prepare the budget this time next year.
Yeah, I'm just.
And in the interest of transparency and making it a little easier to understand.
I'm not saying the numbers are wrong, I'm saying I can see where it adds a little confusion for layperson.
And maybe we could just add the page in where Mr. Robert put in from the plan as to which computers, or whatever were being replaced.
Okay.
The technology plan.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea as well. I think part of the confusion too is like when we do a list of the number of computers in the school and then compare it to the number of students, and you get 20 over, that's not counting the number of computers that are used by teachers exclusively that aren't available for use for students. I don't think I could look into that. But
Well, just a quick follow-up too is, I would assume that the teachers are getting better computers because you don't have to worry about them breaking, probably less likely.
They don't sit on there, so.
So I'm saying that, I can understand why you might buy different computers for the children because of the risk to them, but just when you lump them all together, that might be nice to see, full on.
Other questions on page 16? Okay, let's move on to Betty?
Under criminal record checks, 5313, I'm assuming that's because you're having more people coming in?
There's also a change, right?
We upped that a little bit because of the actuals. If you look back the last few years, we hadn't budgeted enough in that line, so we increased that to reflect more in line with the actuals.
Okay, moving on to 17. Seeing none. 18? Moving on to 19. Questions, page 20.
Well, I have a question.
Joe, which line, please?
On page 19 and line 001, building maintenance. Just so I can understand, let's see, this is, it's dropped somewhat over previous budget. I mean, we're talking...
What?
Are you
Oh,
building
I'm
maintenance?
looking, I'm sorry,
Okay.
it's increased.
You're looking
Yes.
at line 5430-001,
Yes.
is that correct? Where they're replacing gym lights,
Yeah.
clock system, and the general
maintenance,
maintenance?
Right. It-
Okay.
Yeah, it
And your question?
is, but actually, all three of the items, I suppose, but general maintenance is what it is. That's an ongoing, though it was lower.
What is the question?
What's the question?
I'm going to ask it.
Oh,
The time's running out.
okay. Joe, your question, please?
Yeah. Hard to deal with the silliness, isn't it?
No, we just
Yeah.
trying to,
Well, if you notice, each person has their own perspective on whatever they're
that's true.
asking, and I do
So
in
let's,
my case.
your question, please?
Okay. So, general maintenance seems to have been running 25,000. It shows up there. It was a little less in a previous budget at 17.4. But there's some increases based on the current proposed budget that include a replacement of the clock system. Is that clock system malfunctioning? Why does it need replacement?
Our clock system is old and does regularly malfunction. Our clocks often are significantly off, which makes things a little bit challenging. So yes, it is due for
I
replacement.
assume these are all coordinated clocks.
Yes.
They're
Yes,
throughout the
so
building.
usually if one clock is off, all of them are off.
Are they digital or are they analog?
They're analog.
Analog?
Yep.
Okay. Are they going to digital? Is that part of the idea?
No, I think it's the same system, just an upgraded, newer version.
Okay. And how about the gym lights? Why are they being replaced?
The intent with the gym lights is to replace the bulbs and replace them with more efficient LED bulbs, and that also necessitates replacement of the ballasts, which I understand is like a motor, but don't ask me more than that.
Well, yeah. Well, I don't know, somebody described it as a motor, you said?
Ballast.
Yes, I happen to know what a ballast is.
Okay, so she didn't, but she doesn't need the
Well, that's all right,
clarification.
but I'm hearing.
Let's move on.
It's more of a trans.
Folks,
The lights are the
Let's-
original ones that are with the gym. So
Mr.
we're
White?
sort of upgrading them, hopefully, to the LED ones, so that they're more cost efficient in the gym.
Still like
I would imagine they would be. I don't know what's up there now. I've been in the gym a number of times. I actually don't like the lighting, but that's a personal thing.
Okay, hold on, we have a response.
So the LED bulbs they're going to require a different amount of voltage and current than the whatever we have there now, which are likely much more. So that's the ballast is what contains the transformer. So that does the step up and step down of the voltage. As far as I
So you're converting to LED.
LED, which should be more energy efficient.
Should be, yep. Is there going to be, is there some consideration given to color correction? And I say that, actually, that's important over the long term, but if,
Okay,
you know.
Joe, and I want to clarify something for everybody, including our newest members. Budget Committee's position is to review the proposed expenditures, not to question whether or not the school board or the Board of Selectmen have done their due diligence in asking, in clarifying, have you looked at this, have you done that?
I realize our position is not to.
Ours is
I
simply the
understand.
finances.
I understand that,
Okay.
except that.
So
except that
color,
as a-
I'm thinking, doesn't have anything to do with what
you
we're
may-
here for.
You may see it that way, I guess I don't, but just as we were questioning somewhat the nature of the computers that were being selected, in this case, I'm only just observing that aside from hopefully efficiencies that are gained by an LED system, that a few other thoughts may be given to it, which I think would make it more useful. If the money's going to be expended, and we're talking money, why not do it as thoughtfully as possible for the future use?
Okay. Other questions on page 19? Okay, seeing none. Page 20. Michael?
We had a discussion last week with the town budget that they seem to be getting fuel oil for less money than the school is. Is that being looked at? Or?
So I spoke a little bit to Dr. Gadomski, and part of the problem is that the town is looking a year out. So they're looking at January to December. We're looking 18 months out. So I think they're looking at it, but that's the hard part, is that because our budget goes July 1 to June 30th, getting that extra 6 months into 19 is the hard part of the getting the quote.
It's the uncertainty about what the cost is going to be.
Correct, in 19.
Two different heating system years.
Yeah.
We've talked to, we put out for bid about month and a half ago, the propane and the fuel oil, excuse me. And the propane came back with the bids and we secured those for all of our districts. And the fuel oil, we were told that there's an additive that's going into the fuel oil that's coming out in the near future that they didn't have they weren't ready to make a bid for 18 months out. So I had some discussions with Joe Gunter about pooling up and seeing if we could get a better price. The problem is, like Barbie was saying, that you're bidding out, the town is bidding out for fuel oil starting now in January 1st, and we're bidding out fuel oil that's basically going to be used in the winter of 2018-19. So we've been in contact with Rhymes, we've been in contact with Irving, and I'm going to call them again at the beginning of next week and see if they're ready to give us a quote yet. But to this point, they wouldn't give us a quote. So they told us that the guesstimate is $2.50 a gallon. So we put that in as a marker, and as soon as we can lock in that price, if we can do that soon before the deliberative, then obviously that line could be adjusted.
Thank you.
Other questions on page 20? Page 21. Funny?
I don't know if Scott can, without getting into any details, explain to me the homeless transportation line, because that's a Never seen that before.
For many years, and not just in your district, the special education transportation lines were used to cover the needs of your homeless students. And for clarity and transparency, it's important to create another line to cover the needs of those students, because they're not students with disabilities. I mean, they could be, but so I'll give you a brief explanation. There's federal legislation attached to ESSA, the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. There's a part of that called McKinney-Vento. It was an amendment that was done that requires districts, when a student is homeless, that we have a homeless liaison determine whether they're homeless, and they get to choose whether they stay in their school of record. Like, let's say a student in Pittsfield became homeless and moved into, doubled up with a family in Northwood. That student, under federal law, would have the ability to be transported back to Pittsfield.
Okay.
And so in those situations, we get in touch with the other school district, and we're required to come up with an agreement to pay for transportation. It doesn't make much sense to agree to anything other than 50%, because it's going to go back and forth each way. And so in that situation, that line would be used to pay up front for the transportation, and the other district would reimburse 50%. And in the inverse situation, where a student became homeless in Northwood and doubled up in another community and came back, the district would do the same reciprocal action, the other district. So it really is just for clarity purposes. You have, I think in my last census, 12 homeless students within your community. And that line's used to take care of that transportation requirement if they choose to stay in their school of origin. School record.
Thank you.
Joe?
And you're saying that that was previously just included in the special ed line for transportation?
I think historically you'll notice that I tried to figure things out over the last 5 years. If there's things in the special ed lines that don't belong there, I try to put those in a different place so it's very clear to the community where the expenses should be coded to. And so that, with the increase in homeless students, that made sense to break that up and pull it out of the special education lines for clarity.
Right. Thanks.
Other questions on page 21? Okay, moving on to 22.
Well,
Joe?
just a slight follow. My reference before, this is the case where, because of changes in special ed, the special ed line for education, transportation is also, because, well, transportation is dropping also in that same category, because these are students that are moving on to the high school. Is that the same category here? Is there anything else going on with that line as far as?
First, your clarification is correct, that you'll see the corresponding drop in the elementary school transportation line. That elementary school transportation line not only includes your out-of-district students, it includes your in-district students that require specialized transportation, and it includes your monthly run charge for Durham School Services, which we pay a monthly charge, and they cover your preschool needs, and they cover your in-district special education needs.
Okay, thanks.
Other questions on 21? Okay, moving on to 22.
Thought we were on 22.
23?
23, we just did 22.
Well, we sort of went back to cover a question. Okay, so page 23.
Under 5623,000, I think rhymes is spelled wrong.
Actually, no.
I thought
No,
it's-
that's right.
Isn't it RY?
No.
Oh, my God.
Yes!
And it's on
Ginger, put a
record,
star on the
too.
calendar.
I gotta mark it on the calendar. You have to do it.
question.
No, and it's
Ryan's is
recorded
online.
too.
I'm sorry?
It is? RY?
Yeah.
RYH?
It is RY, isn't it?
Yeah.
Thank you, Tom.
I don't know. We'll have to.
There's no
send-
H in it.
Right,
There you
thank
are. There you
you.
are. I mean,
There's three of them.
Okay,
3 out
so
of 3.
So I'm correct.
we'll correct that at our
Note
next
that,
meeting.
please.
Moving
Good notice.
Okay, take the star off the calendar.
I'll take the star off the calendar.
Joe has.
Joe, you have a question on 23?
Well, just an observation, not a question, really. Just, so our total elementary costs are, towards the proposed budget, have dropped by 324,246 and change, and that's overwhelmingly due to the special ed.
That's a contributing factor,
Education.
yes.
That doesn't include the transportation, right?
It does include the transportation.
It does.
Elementary, all elementary costs
Yeah.
are in this.
I'm only saying that as I'm looking, because I don't know where the previous number I got.
So is there a question that
No,
you're
not
concerned
really.
about, Joe?
No,
Or-
as it stated, it's 324,000.
Which is a 4.56% drop in elementary overall.
Yes.
So, moving on to page 24. Oh, I'm sorry,
I
Tom?
have one other question about elementary ed, and that is in the transition from half-day kindergarten to full-day kindergarten, there were anticipated costs associated with that, and I'm wondering if the school board encountered anything out of the ordinary in implementing that program in terms of the money needed to have 2 classrooms going with 2 teachers and 2 aides, or were you pretty much within the estimates that you started with? I think it came in.
Pretty much what we estimated for the program.
I think the only thing that we weren't expecting was that maybe wasn't in that cost, was a new smart board. A smart board.
Okay,
Because
well,
we're going to each of them.
one second, Barbie. We've got to wait for the candy dispersal to end.
Just
So
chatting
that,
back and
so that
forth.
we
I mean, we haven't got
can
any questions going
hear
here.
the answers.
And I'm also going to let you see what's happening, so when it comes around, you know what to pick for. Okay?
So, open quickly.
I got old hands.
While we're waiting, I did check on my phone, and it seems that Rhymes is spelled incorrectly in here, so it is R-Y-M-E-S, so we'll have to change that.
Okay, so I've forgotten who I have to give a star to, but anyway. So,
That's one.
no, it's just that the mic is right there and the rustling and,
Oh, I moved that thing away from you several times. It keeps coming back.
there you go. Okay. Did we need I'd forgotten what we were even talking about. Barbie.
The
Just
only
interrupted
extra
you.
expense was the whiteboard, the smart board.
Cost for kindergarten came
Right.
in as anticipated, budgeted, with the
Right.
exception of needing to have a smart board for the second class.
Okay.
Amen. Thank you.
This?
Okay. So now that our candy vendors are almost done with
It's all done.
with their thing.
Do you want all these? You want all these?
I said almost done. Let's move on to high school, page 24. Are there any questions?
No.
Yes. Scott?
To clarify, 01-1100-5561-000, the first line, when we developed the budget, the note was accurate, and now that student has become the responsibility of another district, so the line has been reduced, but we need to strike that note out of there.
So the line is still correct at proposed $1 to hold the line open.
Where
but-
are we? What line?
First one.
Very first one on page 24.
Oh,
So the explanation note just needs to be removed because otherwise you're wondering how come there isn't money in that line. Got it. Thank you. Everybody clear on that?
Yeah.
Okay. Other questions on page 24? Okay, moving on, page 25.
Ginger,
Yes, Betty.
just one quick question, and it's probably self-explanatory, but, capital reserve fund, you don't need that anymore?
We're not at those.
The warrant articles will go over.
Separate.
Any other questions on page 25? Bunny?
Why did the high school transportation go down so much?
I'm going to ask you to look at page 21 and 25 at the same time. The transportation, that contract, the way it was formulated in the past, is the high school transportation was billed out as a complete run. So you had 6 elementary school buses, and you had either 2 or 3 high school buses. And the way it was billed out before is the high school buses were billed out, and I think it was at $43,000 or $45,000. So it was 6 times 45 for the elementary school and 3 times 45 for the high school. The reason that it's different now is that the bid that we got from Dale Transportation did the high school simply as an extended run of the elementary school. So it's not billed out as a separate bus, a separate driver. It's an extended run. So the extension of that, if you look on page 21, I believe that's 6 routes total, and then the difference of the extension, obviously we've got 2 or 3 runs that will be extended to go to the high school, and what you see on page 25 under high school is the additional cost for those 3 extended runs. So
That's a
instead
huge difference.
of billing out as separate buses, they're billed out as extended runs. So that's why you're seeing that, the elementary transportation is up $13,000, but overall, the entire transportation bid is down.
Thank you.
Any other questions on page 25? Okay, that being said, we are at the end of the proposed operating budget. We have a motion and a second. Yes.
If I may speak.
You may.
I'd just like to state a reminder that because we're only voting one vote, the entire budget, that anyone who has potential salary or contracted services or any way has any financial, may not vote on this part of, on the motion.
On the motion.
That's been true on subsections, but not on the bottom line in the past.
Well, that's
I think because we have
not
not,
how the...
we did the subsections separately, and therefore the individual involved didn't vote during that subsection,
You vote on the
but you
whole
could vote for the whole budget. But where we're doing the whole budget, I believe Linda is correct.
So that means I can't vote, but I've always voted.
We've always voted in the past on
2
the
years
bottom
ago, I
line.
voted the
Yeah.
bottom line.
Yes, yes, we have.
Well, that's not
Not
what
subsections, but bottom line, because that will take out several people here.
Okay,
Why
so
why
what
wouldn't
we
you be
can
able to
do,
vote?
Well, I get a stipend, well, it's a stipend.
but still,
But I don't
who
think
has, folks? So Betsy, because she's treasurer, Barbie, because she's a school board member, both receive stipends. Is there anyone else
Are you
that
subbing?
has any income from the school? Or any, married to anyone who has a financial interest?
Could I make a statement here?
That's not
I'm not
right.
sure. What you say?
I'm just,
Yes.
I want to make,
Selectmen vote.
I want to make a point. We went through this last week. I get a $2,500 stipend as a selectman. Everybody knows that when the selectmen run for office. Everybody knows that the school boards run for office, that they get paid. I do not think an elected position
I agree.
has to sit there and absolve themselves from a vote
I agree.
on a school budget because it's clear knowledge that we all get stipends. That is so foolish. I thought it was really foolish last week. If $2,500 is gonna weigh on my decision on how I'm gonna vote on a multi-million-dollar budget, then maybe I should even be on this board.
And
I
that's
agree.
been the difference this stipend.
All right, I'm gonna say this, change the rule then, if that's how everybody feels.
That's the way it's
Change
always
the
been.
It's
rule.
always been there.
No,
No,
Well,
if you're an employee, an elected official is not an employee.
Right.
The
Elected is
voters in the
different.
town of Northwood adopted a conflict ordinance, and it's been approved by the voters. If you disagree with that, you go ahead and vote however you want. But I would suggest that somebody change that ordinance.
I actually, for the record, I think I was involved helping
were.
draft that ordinance.
You were.
And it
You
was
actually-
one of the issues was, we actually had people on the budget committee that are actually real employees of the town of school, not elected officials.
Correct.
And it was meant to prevent people from voting on contracts for bids where some family member had a huge financial interest on a contract in town. It was never intended for elected officials. It was to prevent fraud and appearance of ethical violations.
Right.
Not over 2,500, 1,500 stipends.
I'm just saying what's on the books.
Linda, can I ask a question? My term is up before this budget goes
doesn't
into
matter.
effect. Does that
You're
matter?
voting
No.
today. I'm going to stay out of it.
Ginger?
If this committee
Okay.
chooses, if the members choose, they were the ones that held their hand up and said that they would abide by the ordinances and the laws.
Bunny, your comment?
Well, I've been on the budget committee for many, many years, mostly as a school district rep. We always voted. This is something new. I agree with Scott
The
that,
piece was, if you actually
Well,
work.
let me
wait, she's not
finish.
done.
that if you worked for the town or the school district, then you would have to recant your vote.
I don't know if
But
that
if you were
clarification's made in
a
the regulations, but
representative,
maybe it should be.
if you're a representative of either the school or the town, we always voted.
I'm not questioning what was done or who, I'm just saying
I
that's
don't.
what the rule is.
All right, I have a quick fix for today, and then we can take this up at a different time so that we're not...
I agree.
My quick fix suggestion is this, that we find the two sections. I found the school board section. I'm just looking for the treasurer
In
section.
the school board section.
It's in the school board section? School board
But
services.
we're both elected, so
I
it's not
understand
same as an
that.
employee.
Again, for the purposes of today, and until we get this clarified, my proposal is that we take the school board section first. Rightly or wrongly, our two elected officials abstain from voting. We take a vote on that. They have abstained from it, then we can take a vote on the bottom line,
So
where
moved.
everyone would vote,
Yeah.
just as we always have.
So moved.
Mrs. Hartford doesn't take a salary. I mean, it's in the budget,
It
but she
is,
doesn't
but
accept
it's
it.
in the budget, and so...
I just wanted to point that out.
I understand completely. Okay. So,
Goes to field trips.
the school board expenses line is on page 17.
Did you need a motion?
We
We
need
have
a
a motion and a
So
second on the
moved.
floor.
Second.
Okay, so,
We already have one.
I think we have to back out of this one, go to that one, and then switch back to
and
these
then
guys.
switch back.
Yeah.
Okay, so who seconded the bottom line?
Funny.
Bunny and I moved and seconded.
Okay.
So you want us to take ours back?
Rescind that so that
Okay.
we can do a motion on the school board section. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
In the amount of $70,844. Is there any further discussion?
This is, you're pulling that number.
We're pulling out that one section because of a potential conflict of interest until we can get that clarified. So, Betsy?
Abstain?
Barbie?
Abstain.
Tom?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Bunny?
Yes.
Betty?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Scott?
I guess I have to abstain too, because I,
No, you're not in the
paid by the
school.
school.
well, I'm saying,
No.
Oh, just vote.
Just vote.
Please.
Yes or no?
yeah.
Thank you. And yes. Okay, so that section has been voted on. We're back to the bottom
What
line.
was the total, excuse me? Just-
It was the amount that was.
No, I mean, the vote total,
Oh.
sorry.
I gotta add these up.
2 abstentions and the rest.
2 abstentions and the rest were yes. So,
02.
10-02.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So can I move the bottom line now?
Now you can move the bottom line.
Well, 11,830,426.
Second.
So we have a motion and second on the bottom line. Is there any further discussion? Okay, seeing none? Betsy?
Yes.
Barbie?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Bunny?
Yes.
Betty?
Yes.
Joe?
No.
And, whoops, I gotta draw my line through here. Michael?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Brad? Oops, sorry, didn't draw my line through. Bob?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
And yes. So we have 11-1. Okay, so what we have left on the warrant articles, that was article number 2. And we have article number 3. To see if the Northwood School District will vote to raise and appropriate up to $10,000 to be placed in the Building Capital Improvement Capital Reserve Fund for the purpose of financing any and all capital improvements to school buildings, as well as all or part of the cost of new construction for the Northwood School District, with such amount to be funded from year-end undesignated fund balance or surplus, available on July 1, 2018. Current balance as of 12/31/17 is $101,360.77.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there discussion?
So I'd just like to explain that our plan is to take a little money out of this year to do some work in the school, correct, right, out of this one, to fix the front steps going into the building, and to hopefully replace the lockers in the upstairs that, correct me if I'm wrong, I think they were, how old are they? They're 32 years old. So the lockers are kind of rusting out and things like that. So use some of the money out of this instead of putting it into the budget, because this is what this money is for, is capital improvements in the building and everything. So using some of the money out of this, so we want to put more in it.
Buddy?
So you would consider student lockers as capital improvement? I have a question about that.
We would, yeah, because it's improving the
Physical plan.
right, the plant of the building, the building itself.
Since, what is the reasoning, since they're attached to the walls, that they're considered part of the building?
I checked with our attorney on that and asked him just that question about capital improvements and could we use the fund. And since they're affixed as a structure
Okay.
to the building itself, then it falls under this category.
Okay. That
They're rusting out.
makes
Can I
more
ask a
sense to me.
follow-up on that?
Wait, one at a time.
At first, I thought, how can that be considered a capital improvement? But as I was talking about it, I said, well, I guess if they're affixed, that would make a difference. Thank you.
Scott?
Yeah, I actually know a little bit about this. Bond.
Gee, that's good.
How much are the lockers? 26,000.
Around 26,000.
And they physically, when you say they're attached to the wall, they physically, are they just like
Yeah.
nuts and bolts?
Nuts and bolts, I mean,
So you
they're,
could remove them, and, like, if you decide, I don't want lockers in here, I could just remove those.
right.
Yeah, that's really debatable, you're turning, that could go either way.
Wasn't
Yeah.
the original intent.
Joe?
Well,
gets in first.
and I can't picture these. I
Yeah, Bob had
a
his
few
hand
things
up.
in the building,
But so did Joe.
it occurs to me that they're more like furniture, but, or in that category, but not there's lockers that are in some schools that are literally built into the walls, the hallways and so forth. So that becomes somewhat of a structural situation, but I don't know that these are. It sounds to me like these are essentially freestanding until they're bolted to a wall. So there's that element. So again, I would agree that it's kind of debatable.
Well,
but just to say, I mean, if you have something to add to that, it's fine.
well, I like, typically, you throw a dollar price in there too, and the fact that they're, would you say, $26,000? I mean, that's pretty substantial expenditure.
How many lockers is that?
136.
And who do they apply to? So the school has 400
It doesn't matter.
What's the difference?
That don't matter.
I mean, 380.
It's like you look at two things. Is there expendable life longer than a year, and then you look at the dollar value.
You know,
They're 32 years old. They're rusting out. They're falling apart.
well, I'm not questioning that
Yeah.
they may be.
I mean, they're
in this-
definitely
I mean,
more
you
than
can
more-
you can
more than
do
a
either
year.
way. I
Decrepit
mean, you
or
can
something.
justify, and you're paying for it out of that fund, right?
Correct.
Yeah, I guess.
But I'm just, so 100 and, give me that number again, 135, is that what you said?
136 lockers
36.
for 3 grades.
So how many students are in those 3 grades?
Okay,
the
difference. I want to cut to the chase here very
for
quickly
capital-
and remind
Okay.
everyone of one thing. The warrant article that we're reviewing is simply to raise and appropriate up to $10,000 to go into that capital improvement fund. It is not to determine what comes out of it.
All right.
The warrant article that we're acting on is simply, do we recommend this article or don't we?
Why wouldn't this be-
The purpose
I got it.
that the school board chooses to utilize any of these funds,
That can be
that's up to
debatable.
the school board.
Okay.
That can be discussed at a later
Why
time.
wouldn't this be, hold it,
Second.
I'm
Ms.
in the
Dole.
middle of.
Move the
No,
question.
I'm in the
Ms.
middle.
Dole, can I make
That's
a
out of
comment?
order.
Very quickly, Joe.
Why wouldn't this be a maintenance item as opposed to coming out of capital?
Again,
Because
this
it's
is a
all
matter
about-
that the school board has determined that at some point in the future,
Yeah, but we're
they may,
asked to spend the
excuse me,
money.
Joe, I'm trying to explain why we don't need to have that conversation. It doesn't pertain to this article.
Yes, it does.
This
it
article
doesn't.
is simply, will we vote to recommend to add $10,000, up to $10,000?
But if it's a maintenance
Excuse me,
item-
Joe, let me finish.
It's not,
That's not part of the article. What the school board chooses to use the funds that are in that capital reserve fund in the future is a completely separate matter. That does not have any bearing on whether or not we recommend $10,000 to go into this fund. That was simply additional information, but it has nothing to do
Well, I
with our
disagree
action
with
today.
you. It says
And you may do
capital
so.
improvements.
I've had a call
It
to
says
move
capital
away.
improvements. It doesn't say maintenance.
Joe.
Did you not hear them say they had consulted with the attorney on this
Well,
matter?
It's
Okay.
debatable.
Again.
Recommendation is that it be
Folks.
seen as a capital
It's debatable.
improvement.
You didn't hear
Hey.
that.
Not here.
Tom, please.
Excuse me.
Joe,
Yes.
Please
the
come to a school board meeting.
question that we are reviewing is whether or not we recommend to add $10,000 to a particular fund, not what they're going to use the money for.
Okay.
Thank you.
The other.
I have had someone move the question.
Ginger.
Can I just make one comment?
You
too?
move the question, but I'll bring it up after. Because it has to
Okay,
do-
and I'll make certain that we do that. Okay. We've had a motion to move the question. We will take a vote on that. Betsy?
Yes.
Barbie?
Yes.
Tom? Yes. Dan?
Yes.
Bunny?
Yes.
Betty?
Yes.
Joe?
No.
Michael?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Scott?
Jeez, I like
Scott?
this bantering, yes.
Thank you. Okay, 11 to 1, discussion is ended. We will now be voting on Article 3.
You want to recognize Bob?
No, the question's been moved.
Question's been moved.
Gotta finish this.
So, Betsy,
Yes.
Barbie,
Yes.
Tom, Dan,
Yes?
Bunny,
Yes.
Betty,
Yes.
Joe,
No.
We just voted on it.
Michael,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
and yes. Okay, Article 3 is recommended 11 to 1. Bob, I'm sorry, what
It's all right.
comments were you
It
going
was
to
just a
make?
quick question, because we started discussing how that monies would be used. And the question that I have is, who has the authority to spend the capital reserve fund?
The school board.
And we granted that at a school district meeting? Okay, I'm just trying to, okay.
I assume
Because
so.
it's expendable trust fund, right?
No, it's not.
It's a capital reserve fund, but you have to
Oh, if
have...
it's capital reserve, you have to get permission
You have to get
from the
permission.
town to vote it out.
We already gave them permission.
Yeah, but then you should have moved it to a expendable trust fund. See, if they voted at town meeting to allow you to take money out of it, it
As
should be.
agents to expend.
It needs to become an expendable trust fund, not a capital reserve.
Knocking.
Actually,
Yeah.
if you go to your
With the
attorney,
hearing.
We gave them permission maybe
With
8
the
years ago.
town went through the same thing a couple years ago.
Yeah.
I would have to defer to the SAU because I don't know anything about that.
So a suggestion would be for the SAU to dig into that and clarify whether this article is written with the correct title of that particular fund.
Because we went through the.
And if
town
we
went through
find that there's a change required, because it is in fact an expendable trust fund, but it's not listed here, then we can readdress that article when we meet for the school's public hearing on the 11th. That make sense? Okay, so we have gone through the 2 articles that we need to take action on.
What about the HVAC?
I'm sorry?
Oh, I'm sorry. Did we vote about the HVAC?
Now we're going on at Article 4 now.
I'm sorry.
I think that's where we're going now. Article 4.
Sound like it.
No,
Oh, no.
we do not, the Budget Committee does not need to vote on Article 4 because it's
Not raising
simply, it's not
appropriate-
raising and appropriating any
Okay.
money. It's simply a clarification or a change in the
We are done.
name of the fund, the purpose of the fund. So, we have finished with the school's proposed operating budget and warrant articles. Reminders for our next meetings. So, as we said at the beginning of the meeting, Linda's going to be mailing out our minutes from both last Saturday and today, as soon as those extensive minutes can be finalized. As soon as you get them, folks, it's much easier to recall what was said, who said what. Geez, did I really say that? If you review them as soon as you get them. Mark any changes that you note. Bring them with you. Our next meeting is going to be Wednesday, January 10th. Instead of 7 o'clock, we're going to start that at 6:30. The reason for that is January 9th is the last day to receive petition warrant articles that include money. And if they include money, then the Budget Committee has to review and act on, do we recommend or don't we recommend, and we need to do that before we start the public hearing.
Could you repeat the time? You said January
6:30 on Wednesday, January 10th.
6:30.
It'll be 6:30 both nights
That's true, because we may have
on Thursday. too.
something,
School on the 11th
Wait.
at 6:30.
why,
In case we have anything there.
oh, that's true, if we get a
Petition
petition,
warrant
right, if we get petition warrant articles. Well, we'll be able to clarify that on the 10th, because if we haven't received any petition warrant articles for the school that include money, they have to be in on the 9th as well. So If we don't get any,
Why
then
can't you just have the meeting at 6:30 anyway?
we probably could do
Instead
that.
of trying to get a
And
hold of
trying to
people
get a
the
hold
day
of everybody.
before.
We'll just plan on 6:30 both nights.
Because if you gotta
Right. And that way, who knows, we might actually
get
get
out
out
of here
midnight.
at 7:30.
Those are our next two meetings, January 10th and January 11th.
Tom?
I'm aware of the fact that we are working from materials that were prepared in advance of our meeting last week, and that this shows that the school board does not recommend this appropriation warrant Article 2 by a 1-2 vote. And I think that there has been a subsequent meeting at which the school board approved the budget by a 3-2 vote.
Correct.
So I
And
want
I
to
will
make sure
ask
that
our school
going
board rep to
forward-
address that.
So that is correct. At our meeting Thursday night, we took another vote. Usually, in the past, we've always tried to get all 5 members as part of the voting parties on the board. All 5 members were present, and the vote was a 3-2 vote to recommend the budget to the budget committee. The bottom line stood as it was. There were no changes to it.
And I'm wondering whether the materials that were prepared in advance of this meeting for the public reflected that change, or has it?
Same as ours.
Because I wouldn't want the public to think that the school board shot down their own budget.
That would be an interesting twist, yes.
Thank you.
One more thing, I have a note about a meeting on Tuesday the 9th, but we're not having that meeting.
No, Tuesday the 9th is simply the date that the state has set, that, because they have a whole schedule.
We
It's
did
a
talk
drop-
about that.
No good.
Right, we did talk, that's right, we did. We did talk about the potential of coming in that night if we needed to.
I'll strike it.
But you can strike that one out.
Thank
So
you.
we have just the 10th and the 11th. Are there... So is everybody clear about our next meeting? I'm sorry, Linda, that's right, you had asked.
I just, under internal business, I'd like
Yeah.
to make a recommendation that I think we may have gone from a 3-page procedures and we streamlined it.
We did.
I think it may be time to take a look at that again and consider some additions to it. In particular, just process and how members, what members may be allowed to do during the meeting or not do, or ask questions or not ask. I'll give an example, and I'm not trying to pick on anybody, but if, for example, if there's a question about a position, that somebody asks about the position and not how is John Smith doing in his role. And then the name, as if we're talking about individuals and their performance, but rather the position itself and its need for that's recommended by the school or the town. And those type of questions, so that these don't become issues at the meeting itself. Or if someone asks, maybe they can ask it related to a particular item in the sense of how it relates to money, but sometimes we all have different styles of speaking and asking. And I think in fairness to everybody that there has to be some allowance for getting to the aspect of how it relates to dollars. And if it doesn't relate to the budget committee's responsibility in creating a budget, then somehow some wording that could reinforce that so everybody understands that coming onto the budget committee.
I've got a copy here of the last ones we did, which were actually done. We approved them, my copy says October 20th of 2015.
That's correct.
And those items I was reading down as you were speaking, and There are a couple that have been addressed, but perhaps not as clearly. You know, we simply say members shall abstain from voting when a conflict of interest exists. But we do not specifically clarify any longer what constitutes a conflict of interest.
Well, that definitely needs to be addressed.
Correct.
Because when you sign up for the budget committee, you sign an oath of office, and my understanding is the town clerk provides the document that's been approved by the townspeople. And I think we need to go back, and I don't know if you want to have a subcommittee or just address this in March.
One at a time, please. Linda's still speaking.
You know, do this after March, after everything's done, or we have a new group, or do it before the public
If you're
hearing.
going to do this, it should be done with the current group before we get new people on. What's Scott's suggestion?
I was, just to go back, I was one of the ones to help draft that policy. The intention, like I told you what the intention of that policy is. I think if you call council, and it could depend on who calls, but if you phrase the question, I do not think that policy was ever intended to stretch to elected officials voting in the capacity of their elected capacity. I'll give you an example. That was written so that if somebody had a family member that worked at, for example, somebody had their spouse was a teacher at the school, or for example, we have a member of the budget committee that happens to be the animal control officer and a member of the fire department. That was meant to address those issues. That was never meant to address people that were elected officials operating in their elected capacity. And I can tell you right now,
I agree.
If that's the intent, that's fine, but that should be in the procedure so that there's no questions on anybody that's sitting here whether or not they should vote or not vote.
Well, why don't you?
I think that's
No,
what I'm saying.
I'm not doing that. I already did it.
Okay, so I'm going to toss out a couple of things here. As Linda mentioned, you know, we probably should have a separate meeting. And I agree, since we've been discussing this today in particular, that it should be this committee, therefore before March. Deliberative sessions appear to be the first week in February, give or take a few days. I don't have exact dates yet. Do you recall?
I believe it has to happen between the 30th and 10th.
Has the school board set their deliberative?
We do.
And do you recall the date?
They're gonna-
Oh, you were still talking about that, though. Okay, so sometime before the 10th.
Yeah.
Okay. That being said, perhaps we can determine if there's going to be a subcommittee, who that would be now, and then have the entire board get together for the sole purpose of discussing that mid to late February. I'm thinking simply because we're going into winter, as we're going to find out later today. We've got 2 meetings in January for the public hearings. Then in February, early February, the deliberatives and elections are the 13th of March. Just to space them out a little bit, what does the committee think about that? Betsy?
I think we're making a mountain out of a molehill. We've been through this with the attorney. It does not take into effect elected people. The ones like Scott just suggested, if you had like a spouse at the school or something, but it doesn't, we've always voted on the bottom line, not a subsection, but a bottom line. That's never been an issue, and that's all been through the attorney. The positions are stipends, and it's stated.
Okay, I would remind you...
Been through legal over the years.
But that's not our only issue. That's not the only item that needs to be addressed, reviewed, further clarified. That's one of the issues, but
And what's the
it's
other
not the only one. the conduct of meetings section and, you know, how we address if questions are asked that go beyond the area of what the budget committee's responsibilities are and how that is all going to work. Bunny?
Could you just decide whether you're going to have a committee or not? Because this could take longer than the budget.
Can I ask, can I just, real quick, can we let, do we need?
Oh, yeah, go, you guys can go. I'm sorry.
Unless you want to.
I just wanted to thank you all for your support. Thank you very much.
And thank you for providing us refreshments. Please feel free to take some of the refreshments home with you, because we will, but there's a lot there, so feel free to take some home.
Okay, I just want to reiterate, I was part of this last subcommittee, and we tried to keep these, we condensed them some, so to get rid of all the extra wordy stuff that was in them. And that was the purpose when we reviewed them and presented them last time.
And as far as conduct, the chair has control over the conduct.
Well, you saw how many times I had to hit my gavel today.
Well, that was today.
And I don't usually do that.
All you need is one phone call down the road.
Keep it up.
Solves that problem.
So, what is the wish of the committee? Do you feel that this is a necessary exercise or something that is unnecessary at this time? Tom?
I think it's unnecessary at this time because I think you did a pretty commendable job keeping most of us in line most of the time and pointing out when we were straying from the topic at hand. I do appreciate Linda's comments about our need to not bring individual persons into our deliberations. I appreciate your suggestions to the chair where you think we may be straying. So I like that as a system rather than talking further about it.
Are there other comments? Brian?
I agree with Mr. Chase about the control and the conduct. I'd like to say I think it could be a pretty easy fix to add a line that this policy does not apply to, however the wording would be, apply to the elected capacity. I think that could be a pretty easy fix and would just make things even more clear for the future.
But are you saying add it to ours or to the towns? Because isn't it the towns?
No, the budget committee has their own procedures that we vote on.
Is that what you're talking about, Linda, is ours or the towns?
The town has an actual policy.
Budget committee.
We actually have a policy, the town has a policy on
Right, so that's what I'm saying, is like, it's one thing to have it in ours,
not
but if the town policy says something different.
We follow ours.
Okay.
As far as I'm concerned.
Unless it's more restrictive.
That's what I was gonna say. It's
Do
like-
something. Do something.
Okay, so let me offer this as a suggestion as well then. Perhaps the selectman's office can get me a copy of the town's policy. I will review it, see where ours is not as restrictive, and then I can report back to the committee at the end of the meeting on the 9th or, I mean, on the 10th or whatever. And then we can go from there. Does that make sense?
Works for me.
Is that good with everybody? Okay, so everyone's aware of our next meeting, correct?
January.
That's all we've got going. Is there a motion?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second, third.
Board.
Okay, all those in favor of...
Aye.
Anybody want to stay forever?